Fire Call. Presented by the Fire Service Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Wednesday mornings at 10:30 on Power 102 FM, empowering you.
Ring, my telephone ring. Is deal for power, 102 calling. And now come a meeting in the chief office. I feel so proud of the fire service. So I'm going on the radio and tell the nation about your 50th anniversary celebration. I say before you put your foot in your mouth, we ain't have nothing much to feel proud about. In some women sleeping with cockroach and rat, and administration ain't care a thing about that. Endless mosquitoes all over Cuba, the men lives under threat from dengue fever. So I say wait, they lean up, wait. Let me put the damn record straight.
Morning all.
Take it from me in my calypso.
Yeah, we like.
Before you go and talk on the radio.
And of course, this is where we talk on the radio with the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service Association. It's always good to have them inside on Wednesday for Fire Call. This will be Ramkissoon, and the president, he's here as always, and very much always on time. I like that. So Ramkissoon, good morning.
Good morning, Sir Charles. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
How have you been?
Busy
as always.
I am dear, but again, Sir Charles, I'm starting off the program with some sad news.
We lose somebody again, you know.
Yeah, somebody's. We have three fire officers who have passed.
In the last week?
Within the last week, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so, we want to send out our condolences to those officers. One of the officers, actually, funeral is today. Immediately after the program, I'll be heading down there in the southern region. He was attached to Point 14 fire station, firefighter Kern Neptune, and our condolences go out to him and his relatives, his family, loved ones, colleagues. This one hit us hard because he's a relatively young fire officer and would have died in the midst of his service, through health complications. And it would lead us straight into what we want to discuss today. The issues that we want to discuss today has to do with medical care in the fire service and, the entitlements for medical care and so on in the fire service and the benefits derived from that medical care, not only to fire officers but even to the public. Yes, the public also benefits from adequately managing the medical care provisions in the fire service, and I will explain. But before I do that, let me just read an article that was published from the EHS, Emergency Health Services International, and it's online. If you type in study, firefighters more prone to cancer risks, you can easily find this article, and it's based on some research that was done. So researchers from the University of Cincinnati have discovered that firefighters may be more likely to develop certain types of cancer than workers in other professions. According to the findings published in the November edition of the Journal of Occupational Environmental Medicine, Grace Lemasters, PhD, Ash Janedi, PhD, and James Lockey, MD, medical doctor, found that firefighters are twice as likely to develop testicular cancer and have significantly higher rates of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and prostate cancer than non-firefighters. The researchers also confirmed previous findings that firefighters are at greater risk for multiple myeloma. The University of Cincinnati-led team looked at 32 previously published studies covering 110 firefighters, most of them full-time male workers, to determine the comprehensive health effects and correlating cancer risk of their profession. So the article really goes in depth in terms of these studies to show empirical evidence and data that firefighters and the firefighters that are operating within Trinidad and Tobago experience these very, very same conditions, probably even worse, given the level of responses to rubbish heap type fires and so on, where you find some of the most dangerous materials when they combust. Firefighters are no different in terms of the health effects that we would have experienced in comparison to the officers internationally. And these officers, the empirical evidence shows that firefighters are in fact 3 times more likely to succumb to health illnesses, long-term illnesses, chronic respiratory illnesses, different types of cancers, based on the inherent dangers that really occupy our job. So the point we want to make this morning, without going into that, because just discussing that issue alone will take us probably about 2 or 3 programs. But the issue is that within the fire service, we really need adequate health surveillance, a medical doctor. We need a medical doctor for fire officers. Remember, in the context that fire service would have separated from the police service in the 60s. Before that, fire service and police service was one. So the police service would have had to respond to fires and so on prior to that. And then came the Fire Service Act, which established a fire service and separated the fire service. But Sir Charles, in 2018, we are still finding ourselves accessing medical care for fire officers from the police medical doctor. In other words, we do not have, for the 2,000 plus established positions for officers in the fire service, we do not have a medical director, a medical doctor for fire officers.
After all these years.
After all these years. And the evidence shows that we are more likely to develop health problems because of the nature of our job. While the police officer may be at risk for the man with the popo, we have to study the health risks that are involved in the suit that you get on your skin and inhale and so on, the various types of dangers, the exposure to carcinogens and so on. These are our enemies, and therefore the need for a mentor, we now lobbying for to be established. No. This thing is established in the fire service terms and conditions of employment. It's our contractual entitlement as fire officers to have a medical doctor on board. Let me just...
Obviously with good reason.
Yes, let me just pause a second. I just want to welcome Assistant Secretary of the Fire Service Association, Mr. Dineen Mohammed, and Assistant Secretary Northwest of the Fire Service Association, Comrade Keon Guy.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Morning.
So the comrades accompany me this morning. I want to welcome them. I think this is Keon's first time on the program here, and I'm glad to see him stepping up. So Charles, so just to make the point that in our regulations, it is provided that we are entitled to free medical care. which means what it really means, we should have a doctor that dealing with fire officers and providing some type of health surveillance and so on, especially, Sir Charles, in the context that I have been continually coming here to send out condolences to fire officers who continue to perish.
Yes.
And though I do have empirical data to prove that it's related, I mean, they won't shut.
Well,
They won't shut. They didn't.
Well, the
it's
fact-
health. All of them passed due to health
Due to certain
issues
things, and if you see
and
certain
relatively
things,
young officers.
Yeah. Well,
We need studies being done in Trinidad and Tobago that's similar that could link it for fire officers as well.
It can't be so coincidental.
That's right.
This is
Fire-
the point.
that fire
That is the point I
officers,
wanted to
most
make.
of them dying
Right.
from A and B.
Right.
know?
Exactly.
It
And
has to have a reason.
almost at the end of their service or just after retirement. Fire officers don't live long, and that is a fact, Mr. President. That is a fact.
Correct.
Fire officers don't live to see 70 and 75 years and 80. We don't.
Don't make the full lifespan.
So although we may not have the data that a study
but
will
because,
bring,
things,
we could pick sense from nonsense,
you can watch it and
Charles.
you can see it.
Right.
You know,
But
but it's amazing, you know, to know. How long ago? What did you say when they had the separation from the police? And
I
the,
think it's 1967. 1967.
Yeah.
Look how long. You know,
Well, 1965 the act came out.
Yeah.
Now, Mr.
And since then, to now, to know that, you know, that these things that should have been, and this is the kind of thing that's getting me kind of frustrated with this country, you know, because
Yes.
how could someone and someone's over the years not see the importance of making sure these things go into place? How do you
But-
set up everything halfway so?
It gets worse. Now, in my early years in the fire service, right, nearly 20 years, we would have had that arrangement that exists now with the police medical doctor.
Yes.
So we would have access medical care through the police medical doctor and so on. And what is happening now is that the situation is worsening because as fire officers, we are experiencing some resistance to get that medical care. Obviously, the police service has to bear that bill, and the fire service is really riding on that
Right.
that expense. And clearly, Sir Charles, there is a need for us to have our own at this time and be able to manage our own health care. And that is part of the point we want to make, because basic things like dental provision and optical provisions that are enshrined as in the regulations as part of our entitlements are basically being denied to fire officers.
Yes.
Basic health care that we need as fire officers, health surveillance, it's being denied. And that is unacceptable as far as the association is concerned. And I would tell you, Sir Charles, as the president of the association, I am putting it to you today. I give you the assurance that if there's any issue that is going to cause me to move my membership and to influence my membership to take a serious stand, this will be the issue, because it is unacceptable. What is happening in terms of the care for fire officers in this country is not good enough at all. Fire officers are basically contracting long-term chronic diseases, and I mean succumbing to it, and it's not good at all, and it's basically a breach of our terms and conditions. Now let me give you the next side of it. Just before I close, so that it's a sort of a long-winded point, but I need to make the point. It will also benefit the public to have a medical director in the fire service. Not only the officers, but the public, because having a medical director is also a requirement to provide emergency medical care to the public. Because the medical director would be responsible to set policies, to set protocols that guide officers in providing medical care. Remember, on the backdrop that fire officers, the fire service is the only protective service with the responsibility to respond to the public for emergency health care, emergency medical care services, emergency pre-hospital care. We provide that through our ambulance service. Now, when we don't have a medical director on board in the fire service, the officers are really stymied in the way they operate. It causes a fluctuation, a wavering in the quality of our service. So having a medical director within the fire service to assist in, or even direct and manage how we respond and ensure that the public receives the best medical care would be part of the requirement for a medical doctor, and then the public is who is going to benefit. Remember, in Sir Charles I, is only recently in 2014 you had the passage of the Emergency Ambulance Services Act.
Yes.
And that is because the public demanded through the parliament that some laws be put in place that establishes standards for emergency ambulance services and emergency medical care for the public. The public demanded that because they were not satisfied that persons were just coming with a big van and throwing people in it and dropping them in the hospital and not being as professional as the international standards require.
Yes.
So they set standards in 2014. Since 2009, it ended in 2014 with the full coming into force of that law.
Yeah.
And therefore, the fire service, according to that law, is required to have a medical director on board. So all these things will benefit the public. So again, Sir Charles, the grand point is that again, I have to call on Minister Dillon. Minister Dillon is pivotal in assisting us with this establishment of a medical doctor for the fire service. And I have to reiterate, we have written, we have called, we have begged and pleaded for a meeting to follow up with promises made, and there is no acknowledgement whatsoever. And I'm telling you, Sir Charles, the fire service association, and continue to just talk on the radio and talk, in any quarters. We have to go that other step. We have to go forward, because what is happening is not acceptable, not for the public, neither for the officers.
And all of these things that you continue to highlight, it's not unreasonable requests. No. So, and for the life of me, I can't understand why people over the years, even today, can't see the importance of sitting down and talking with you all about it and making sure that these things happen.
Yeah, but it echoes a sentiment, Sir Charles, of how serious the stakeholders are and those in authority in ensuring that the fire service is properly equipped to offer the service that we are mandated to offer to the public. How serious are they? Yeah. Because some of these issues we have been raising over and over, time and time again. And still we nowhere closer to addressing these. I was talking with an officer recently who used to be part of the organization years ago, Mr. McIntyre in the credit union, and we was discussing the topic that some of the same issues that we are trying to address now, trying to advocate for now, is the same issues that he was trying to advocate for a decade and more ago.
Yeah, and why are we stuck in this time warp that we can't come out of it? Yeah. It's not to say that it's something that is unnecessary, and I mean, like, you are talking about having a doctor, what is required internationally,
and lawfully.
And we didn't even talk about the part of the fact that even protective things that are supposed to protect you all from that.
Yeah, we don't address that today. We'll do that next week. Okay.
So all that is part of the mix.
But Mr. Ramkissoon was mentioning some of the risks associated, and I remember when we was doing a job evaluation years ago, that issue came up where they were saying that some people will say a police officer is at a higher risk than a fire officer, because he's more likely to get shot than a fire officer. But the fact of the matter is, Sir Charles, is that a police officer is exposed to a lot less risk albeit some will be more frequent, a lot less risk. And where a fire officer is exposed to a wider range of risk.
Yeah, but I wouldn't go down their road, because at the end of the day, right, it's two different types of risk, and both of them, I mean, I wouldn't want to be in the police officer's shoes when he has to deal with the issues he has to deal with. And I know that he wouldn't want to be in my shoes when I have to go into the belly of the beast. Yeah. So I wouldn't want to make that comparison.
Regardless of where you sit, you know, I mean, if your job spec requires that, look, this is what is needed, well,
it should be provided.
Provided, that's basically what they're asking for, you know.
And that's the point, our job specs do require that.
20 and 30 years, they try to get into place.
Correct. Yeah. I want to just, and so Charles, I'm hoping that you would open the lines at some point.
Yeah, well, it's up right now, people, what they call.
Right. So what the researchers have said, according to the researchers, their findings suggest that the protective equipment firefighters have used in the past hasn't done a good job in protecting them against cancer-causing agents they encounter in their profession. Firefighters work in an inherent dangerous occupation on a daily basis. The Masters said, as public servants, they need and deserve additional protective measures that will ensure they aren't at an increased cancer risk. There is a critical and immediate need for additional protective equipment to help firefighters avoid inhalation and skin exposures to known and suspected occupational carcinogens, said Lucky, who is a professor of the environmental health and pulmonary medicine at UC. In addition, firefighters should meticulously wash their entire bodies to remove soot and other residues from fires to avoid skin exposures. So, Sir Charles, the issue of personal protective equipment and so on, that is another issue which we need to discuss, which we'll do at another time. But Sir Charles, certainly to mitigate the effects of firefighting responses and so on, to mitigate the effects of exposure to these carcinogens and so on, we certainly need a medical doctor in the fire service. We cannot place all that burden on the police service. We need something that is specially tailored for us. Their circumstances in the police service is different from ours. We need to have our own medical director.
All right, so let's take a couple of calls. 222-8255, 612-8255. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, morning, gentlemen. Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning, Sir Charles. This is a long time you talk.
For real.
Yeah, well, my grandfather, and he go to work at the he used to work at the area, and he was kind of traumatic, it has changed your life dramatically, and the guys could attest to that, because sometimes you may go and see an accident and then you can't sleep, you have a drink.
That's right.
And all this sort of thing. But in terms of the risk involved, right? The risk involved, in my view, for the fireman is much more than the police. Now, although you have to categorize it, because the police are risk too, they could get shot on their duty and whatever. But the firemen also, when they go to order fire now, they could have explosives in the area. They could also get shot. The smoke that they will be inhaling is more detrimental to their lungs, to their lifespan, and their personal nature then. Nice? In terms of sperm count, all that could drop. So I think it is very, very, very important that these guys and them get what they are asking for. It is due to them, because they save lives, right? And if we are aspiring to be a better country, all of these things must be taken into consideration. So I give you all the full support and the backers in that. Keep knocking on the door. And if we have to go in the plan B, come out and protest, or they do what I have to do, let it be known that you all fight for a good cause then. So it's a good topic, and I endorse it 100%. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
So
caller.
Charles, I want to appreciate what the caller gave, but I just want to make the point that this is not, I don't want the discussion to go down the road of any comparison, because the prison officer have his circumstances, the police officer have their circumstances, and what we require to address our circumstances will not address their the circumstances, the most dangerous circumstances facing the prison officer and the police officer. Yeah. In other words, they would need bulletproof vests. They would need certain things as a matter of urgency. We need a medical doctor. We need personal protective equipment. These are the things we need. And that is the direction we look at it.
No problem. Good morning.
Hello.
Morning.
Yes. Hi, good morning, Charlo. Good morning to Mr. Ramkissoon and the other gentleman in the studio there.
Morning.
I just want to endorse the sentiments of the previous caller.
Yes.
And Mr. Ramkissoon, I just implore you just to keep, you have to keep knocking. It's important when you look at the risk involved in firefighting, the fire officer. If you can compare that risk with the other services, police, you look at fire, it's a firefighter. We deal with hydraulics, electricity. You just take every aspect of any risk involved we deal with. You understand? And in the early stages, Mr. Ramkissoon, I remember when I came into the service in the early days, that same protective gear you're talking about, that the firefighting, the suit that they have now, we didn't have that, you know.
No,
that way they say we were supermen. A building on fire, we just get out and get in, go inside the risk, you know. You ain't studying smoke inhalation, you ain't smoking, you ain't studying that, you know. So it's very possible that maybe, even though I may be suffering from effects of them.
Yeah, but Abu, remember the materials and so on that is being used now to construct buildings and that officers are being exposed to. That too has changed and has gotten even more dangerous.
Whole paradigm, you know, and that is important. That medical doctor you're talking about, that we should have had that doctor assigned to the pathways many years ago. Even the police doctor is a kind of, I'm not saying that's fight on, but you know, they would treat you with less importance than if you're a police officer. I've seen that. I have seen that before I left, you know.
All right.
Sometimes you tell men go to the police doctor, they go reluctantly because it's you know.
Yes.
So you just have to keep knocking. And as I said, the risk involved is incomparable. Everything. Firemen can't go up on a roof and they can't come down and they fall in fire. Don't keep falling a hole, they fall in fire. The same policeman, and I don't like to know, the same policeman get up on a mountain and he can see why. You know, he come in the fast station and ask you see why?
I will see you later. Thank you very much, Abu.
We have some officers outside waiting. They have a program for an hour. So just remember, I want to make it safely out of the studio, please, Mr.
But we asking Mr. Ramkissoon for a vacancy to be filled, right?
Yes.
That's what we want.
Yes, we
and
want to.
I seem to recall that a few weeks ago, Sir Charles, that young doctors were coming out of the medical school at UE and complaining, 200 plus them,
yes,
were complaining that they're not getting any jobs.
Vacancies, yeah.
But here it is, they complaining they're not getting any jobs, and we have one vacancy to fill and we can't seem to fill it. Isn't that a coincidence, Sir Charles?
What I would like to also add is that the risk that firefighters exposed to doesn't end at the end of our term. It doesn't end at the end of our term. When we retire, it's not that we all become safe. You know, the chemicals we've been exposed to, whether through absorption or inhalation, was going to follow us into retirement. So we need to ensure that the officers are well cared for while they are active duty and also into retirement. And I think the medical director will assist with that.
And it's a good point you're making, because the reality is where you're not mentioned is that the officers are not being provided for that when they retire in the fire service. Whilst it is different in other like services,
yes,
I could tell you it's different in other like services where retirees have access to medical care, the same as when they were active. In the fire service, the officers are simply turned away. No, partner, you out the service now, no more medical care. When the reality is that when you reach in retirement, that is probably when you're most in need of it.
That is the reality.
That's when you're most in need of it. So,
right.
So Charles, there you have it. I mean, it's an issue that we really need to expound on. But I would tell you, out of all the issues that we have been raising here, medical care, you can't put a value to your health, Sir Charles.
No.
And out of all the issues, I would tell you, in no uncertain terms, that the Fire Service Association will be taking this issue to the limit. And I will tell you why it has only just come up. Because we have raised the issue with our main our head of department and others, and clearly, their hands are tied. They can't deal with it. It is really lies with the minister at this stage to ensure that the government does what is necessary, cabinet does what is necessary, and provides that medical care coverage.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for coming, and of course we'll do it again.
Thanks for having us, Charles.
Okay, thank you very much, people. This has been Fire Call here on Power 102 FM.
I would like to see administration.
Thanks for joining me, folks.
The association.
Until we meet again next
Now
week.
is the time to unite as one.